Many NBA players would have been better off staying with the small market teams that drafted them, finish off their careers with that franchise. Despite even winning 0 rings, they'll always be admired, cherished, beloved, and possibly have a statue cementing their place in franchise history. Had some of the great players been traded to bigger market teams and end up falling short of higher expectations, their legacies would somewhat be tarnished. The legendary John Stockton, for example, impossible to tell if he played on a team like the Knicks or Celtics had he decided to test free agency, but decided to remain in Utah, signed a 3-year contract in '96, age 34, 3 conference finals, 8 straight All-Star appearance, a no-trade clause, felt super comfortable in Salt Lake. Who knows if Stockton would have been able to adapt to the bright lights of Madison Square Garden, a city that never sleeps. Instead, ended up making 2 straight finals in a small market, under the radar in the early 90s playoff exits, played till 40, holds multiple records that'll never be broken, has his own statue outside of Salt Lake. While Tony Parker, involved in trade discussions, still in his prime, rumors of him going to the Knicks, who knows how TP's tenure would have ended, stayed in San Antonio till his second to last season. Best possible outcome, going back to 2 more finals, winning another title, and now nominated to the 2023 Hall of Fame. Keep in mind, his off-court fiasco handled very well by the Spurs, preventing unnecessary damage that would have been a way bigger story if his incidents happened while he was a member of the Knicks or Lakers. TMZ and the entire national media be going after him. But this video, I'll go after all the big name NBA stars for their eras who started in small market franchises, balled out, had tons of success, went on to go to bigger cities, a more hostile media, and impatient fan base while they were all in their primes, not ruined by injuries, but struggled to handle the pressure only to get ridiculed, more disrespected, and even forgotten. Starting with Curtis Rowe, a UCLA legend, 3-time national champion, 11th pick by the Pistons, viewed as a solid player, made the All-Star team in year 5, numbers of 16 and 9. While the 70 Celtics title run coming to an end, with aging stars traded in old Paul Silas and what's supposed to be in his prime, 27 years young, Rowe ended up having his worst season, down to being a 10-7 guy, didn't bring that collegiate championship DNA, 3 regrettable seasons in Beantown, under 7 a game each of his final 2 years, one of the rare terrible decisions ever made by Red Auerbach, chemistry issues, star center Dave Cowens began losing motivation for the game. Rowe's final season in '79, out the NBA before turning 30, starting power forward, a 29-win team after replaced by the rookie sensation from French Lick. Boston went from the biggest laughingstock to the #1 record in a year span. Rowe's career more remembered negatively as one of the most disliked Celtic all time. Next, Rowe's former UCLA and Boston Celtics teammate Sidney Wicks, also a 3-time national champ, the perfect definition of a player who declined and got worse every season. 10 years in the NBA, points per game literally decreased year by year. The 71 Rookie of the Year winner posted 24.5 points, 11.5 rebounds for an 18-win Blazers team viewed as undisciplined, super talented, but didn't always go with the game plan. More remembered for his college days, no postseason any of his 5 years with Portland, sold to the Celtics. The year he was gone, Bill Walton led the Blazers to the title. Wicks declined as a 15-10 guy. His first and only trip to the postseason, 1977, lost to the semis to Dr. J Sixers, known as a big name but not a winning team player, empty stats type guy, absolutely wasn't the type to fit in for the most successful professional basketball franchise, killed the Celtics' pride. His most memorable Boston moment, making the cover of SI magazine, a brutal dark time for the Celtics until Larry Bird rescued the franchise. Boston traded Wicks summer of '78, provided no excitement, questionable effort, 44 followed by 32 wins. Boston got back Tiny Archibald. Wicks finished his last 3 seasons with the San Diego Clippers. If a team like Boston couldn't save him, Wicks' NBA career super forgotten. The Wicks and Rowe era, one of the worst times to be a Celtic fan. Both got most of the blame for Boston's disastrous tenure pre-Larry Bird era.
The perfect Celtics were leaving while the wrong ones were coming in. New additions Sidney Wicks and Curtis Rowe were the opposite of all the team had stood for.
Wicks and Rowe came to symbolize this terrible time in Boston sports. Selfish ball players who wanted the rock, wanted touches, weren't worried about winning. I think one of them had the quote, "The W's and L's don't show up in my paycheck."
Spencer Haywood. After a season with the ABA, the 6'8" big man played with the Seattle Sonics from 71 to 75, took the NBA to court since they require players to be 4 years removed from high school to enter the league. A battle to the high courts. His family lived in poverty, needed the money the worst way possible, became a 4-time All-Star, double-double machine, made first team All-NBA his second and third season, averaged 26 followed by 29 and 13, super gifted, but when traded to the Knicks, Haywood became the highest paid player in the league. The bright lights of Madison Square Garden unfortunately didn't make another All-Star team after age 25, a big mistake having him in a big market. Haywood's drug addiction began in New York, started doing cocaine, 3.5 seasons, numbers dropped to 18 a game, under 9 rebounds, traded to the Jazz, then traded to the big market Lakers for Adrian Dantley. The Hollywood lifestyle caught on with Haywood, all the partying and access to the drugs, seeing people do it frequently, wasn't in tune with the team. After all his early career success, Spencer should have been an all-time great, shortened his career, his play drastically fell apart in the middle of the finals, suspended by Paul Westhead, even thought about attempting to kill his head coach. After being part of the title team, played in Italy for a year before returning to the NBA, 2 more seasons with Washington. Steph Marbury of the New York Knicks, extremely talented, the Coney Island phenom, became one of the most popular players in the early 2000s, started his career with Minnesota, 2.5 seasons with KG before being traded to the Nets, not liking the franchise offered Garnett big money when Marbury believed he was just as deserving, averaged over 20 a game for 7 straight seasons, had a unique street ball style, all the offensive skills to become a Hall of Famer, but instead of fitting in with Garnett, Marbury failed to make the playoffs with the Nets despite his high scoring numbers, traded to Phoenix in 01 for Jason Kidd, a controversial decision at the time. To add more humiliation, New Jersey doubled their wins with Kidd, went from the 12th seed to 1, even made the finals with virtually the same team, while Phoenix failed to make the postseason, dropped from 51 wins with Kidd to just 36 with Steph. Traded middle of 04 to New York, his 4th team in 8 seasons. The year after, with the Suns, pretty much the same players, to the best record, even winning 2 MVPs. While Marbury's 4.5 seasons with New York, 1 playoff berth, swept by Kidd's Nets, became one of the most criticized players, couldn't get along with Larry Brown after Brown helped Iverson get to the finals. Also had issues with Isaiah Thomas when Mike D'Antoni took over, lost his starting spot to Chris Duhon. Refusing to come off the bench, wasted most of his 08 season by not being involved with the team while getting paid $22 million, an absolute travesty. Before Boston signed him, became Rajon Rondo's backup, out the league. His tenure with the Knicks, an absolute shitshow of a travesty. 33, 23, 23, and 32 wins, always wanting to be the guy. The off-court issues hurting the locker room outweigh his production on the court. When mentioning the word selfish in the 2000s NBA, Marbury's name, unfortunately one of the first guys many think of. Despite a disappointing NBA career, given the heavy expectations in New York, Marbury became a basketball legend in China, even having his own statue. At least that's a happy ending. Carlos Boozer of the Chicago Bulls, easily most remembered for his Utah days, the 2-time All-Star started in Cleveland but signed with the Jazz after 2 seasons. Many thought he agreed to resign a long-term extension. Very disliked after, enjoyed 4 consecutive postseason runs. Prime Booz put up over 21 and 10. A small market, didn't get the recognition like the other elite power forwards. An excellent pick and roll finisher, good hands around the rim, embraced in Utah. Led his 51-win squad to the conference finals in 07, incredible playoff run of 23.5 points, over 12 rebounds, even selected to the 08 Redeem team. Despite 3 straight postseason losses to Kobe's Lakers, Booz decided to take his talents to Chicago. 2010 free agency, 5 years, $80 million. Given what happened 6 years before, fans view Boozer as a guy who only cares about getting paid. Became a terrible fit with Tom Thibodeau, got fans ticked off after missing first 2 months of the season by tripping over his gym bag at home, criticized for his lack of hustle, weak defense, failed to close out, missed too many point-blank shots at the rim, undersized at 6'8", picks up unnecessary head-scratching fouls, supposed to be the true second option for D-Rose, brought in as a reliable go-to guy on the post, but super inefficient, destroyed by Bosh in the playoffs, averaged a lackluster 12.6 points on 42% shooting, 16 postseason games 2011, 5 points on 6 shot attempts game 5 versus Miami, didn't hustle or play with any aggression, severely overpaid, took minutes from the left less talented but harder working and better fit Taj Gibson, often benched on defense in fourth quarters, waived after 2014, ended his career with the Lakers. Many Bulls fans who watch closely would consider Boozer a huge liability and made no serious impact. Boozer's former Jazz teammate Darren Williams, compared to draftmate Chris Paul and viewed as a top 2 point guard in his prime, the D-Will CP3 debates, just as intense as Kobe vs LeBron arguments, led his team to the conference finals just his second season. The breakout star averaged over 19 points, 8.5 assists that run, had a stocky frame, strong body, terrific passer, elite handles, a 20-point 10-assist guy in his prime, excelled as a player under Jerry Sloan, but both had their disagreements. After replacing Boozer with the newly acquired Al Jefferson, Williams and Sloan fought heavily, argued about who wants to control the team. After 23 years, Sloan forced to quit with 2 months left in the season. 2 weeks after, Williams traded to New Jersey. His career absolutely went downhill. A blink of an eye, complained about Avery Johnson's offensive system, was supposed to be in the prime of his career, but combined with nagging injuries, plus the franchise moving to Brooklyn in the 2012-13 season, acquired multiple-time All-Star Joe Johnson. D-Will lacked effort after signing for 5 years $98 million, never made another All-Star appearance. Huge expectations under the spotlight given his success with Utah and the CP3 comparisons. Net fans viewed Williams as a top 10 player. Some thought he'd be the second coming of Jason Kidd. More like Jason Kidding, lost to the inferior Bulls round 1. The franchise gambled their whole future for an aging Garnett and Paul Pierce. Both former champions viewed Williams as an MVP candidate, heavy expectations to win it all, only to shit the bed. Couldn't handle the New York City media, super moody, poor body language, didn't seem to care, made excuses, picked up weight, averaged a pathetic 11 points, 36% shooting in the Miami series, even had some 0-point games, ridiculed his final season with Brooklyn. Backup Jarrett Jack played better at point guard most nights, 11 points a game versus Atlanta, 39% shooting for that series, combined 5 points in games 2 and 3, 54 minutes, so bad, team brought him out. Spent a brief time with Dallas before being waived, picked up by Cleveland, not necessarily a big market, but was an absolute travesty in the finals, scoreless 4 of the 5 games, 2 of 16 shooting overall, became more interested in training MMA and boxing, a brutal NBA career ending for the 32-year-old. Wouldn't have gotten this much backlash had he stayed in Utah. Carmelo Anthony, 10-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA, named top 75. His time with the Knicks, chaotic, unfulfilling, disastrous, especially his last 3 seasons, became the most vilified player, viewed upon like a D-Wade CP3 type superstar with the expectations of bringing New York a championship. Anything short was considered unacceptable. After never coming close to getting roasted as much with Denver, Melo always an elite scorer, but lackluster defense at times, made the playoffs each of his 7 seasons in Denver, but only got out the first round once. After the addition of Chauncey Billups, his rocky relationship with George Karl, blamed heavily for not rounding out his all-around game, forced to trade in New York for multiple role players, pretty much half their starting lineup, when many believe he should have just waited till free agency. Having All-Star Amari Stoudemire 14 and 13 to end the 2011 season, swept by Boston round 1, clashed with Mike D'Antoni, ran coach out of town, called the coach killer, chemistry issues with Amari, blamed heavily for forcing his way out too early. After Stoudemire built a relationship with Felton, Chandler, and Gallinari, even an MVP candidate. Many also speculated Melo was jealous of Linsanity's success. Lost to Miami in 5, Prime Melo went on to have his very best season, 54 wins 2013, surrounded with smart vets, led the NBA in scoring, 3rd for MVP, while Amari missed nearly 2/3 of the season. The 2nd seed made it to the semis, fell to the Pacers. Every one of Melo's Knicks season was supposed to be similar to 2013, but unfortunately, his last playoffs with New York, team failed to get quality players. Amari became a shell of himself, Melo stranded and got the most blame. Despite Phil Jackson screwing up with terrible hires, team never got a real point guard. Shockingly resigned with the team 2014 offseason on a max deal when expected to go elsewhere to win, only to get more backlash. Team fell deep in the lottery to draft Kristaps Porzingis. Finally traded to OKC 2017, stayed in New York a little too long, carried the negative image as an ISO guy, nearly out the league after Houston didn't want him, but redeemed himself, had Melo stayed in Denver and continued making the playoffs every year, despite even not going far, wouldn't get bashed as harshly. Dwight Howard, the 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, viewed as a top 5 player, finished top 5 in MVP voting 4 times, even led his Magic to the finals age 23 after being disgruntled with the franchise, traded to the Lakers, championship or bust, the best center in the game, didn't fit well, terrible in the pick and roll with Nash, came off recovering from back surgery, didn't look like his former self, lacked hunger, didn't adapt, wanted the ball more on the post, Gasol forced to hang out the perimeter, LA hiring D'Antoni screwed the team, a bigger spotlight, Nash hurt for half the season, Howard held to all-time great expectations like the other former Laker great big men, the George Mikens, Wilt Chamberlains, Kareem Jabbars and Shaquille O'Neals of the world. Dwight was supposed to follow in those footsteps, but absolutely wasn't built for it. The crybaby antics, 27 years old, Kobe carried the team to the playoffs. Dwight wasn't as serious about winning. After the Achilles injuries, it was Howard's opportunity to lead the team, but absolutely terrible, swept by San Antonio in humiliating fashion, double-digit blowouts each game, ejected game 4, collapsed under pressure, became a journeyman ever since, couldn't get along with James Harden in Houston, Atlanta, Charlotte, Washington didn't want him. Although Howard did redeem himself as a bench player for the 2020 Lakers, his reputation diminished. Still don't take away from the fact his 2013 season with LA the biggest Hollywood walk of shame. Honorable mention, Steve Francis, a solid tenure, multiple-time All-Star with Houston, traded to Orlando for McGrady, didn't get along with head coach Brian Hill, then traded to the Knicks for a washed-up Penny Hardaway and young Trevor Ariza, still had high expectations with New York, but injuries and dealing with personal tragedy combined with having bad surgery ruined his career. Roy Hibbert, another instant decline from All-Star to regressing 2014 season due to team dysfunction. Game was changing with perimeter shooting. Roy became a huge liability. Way slower by his late 20s, lost all confidence, still averaged double figures 2015, but after traded to the Lakers, the starting center averaged 6 and 5 as a 29-year-old, became the worst starting big in the league, out the NBA by 30. Andre Drummond from Detroit to Cleveland, to some thinking he'd be the Lakers' savior, ending up becoming the biggest meme that postseason, first time many realized he was actually that bad. Other guys who could have faded in big markets but bounced back strongly had very good careers. Zach Randolph, one season with the Knicks didn't fit in, short time with the Clippers, wasn't viewed positively, could have broken him, but found success with Memphis, rejuvenated his career, while Brook Lopez seemed to have regressed after being traded to the Lakers. Some thought he'd be out the league after 2018, but Milwaukee signed him for cheap, the rest was history. Now Russell Westbrook, criticized more than ever with the Lakers, likely won't be appreciated until after he retires, gets the most blame for the Lakers' struggles, beloved in OKC, to being the scapegoat for a LeBron-led team. Had Russ still remained with the Thunder or never got traded from Washington, wouldn't get anywhere close to this insane level of negative attention. Thanks so much for watching this video. Which one of these NBA stars starting in small market teams ending up in the big markets were you most stunned by their decline? Let me know in the comments below. I love all of you. See you next time.